So I get a lot of questions from women who are going through a divorce or thinking about it, saying, how can I be independent? I'm afraid of being independent. I'm so used to being married that I'm afraid to be by myself. I don't know if I'm strong enough for this. I don't know if I could handle it. And that is what I want to talk about on this podcast. Specifically, what does it mean to be strong? What does it mean to be independent and how you can get there? To talk about this, I have a great guest who actually lived this scenario. Her name's Macy Chance. Macy is a divorced mom. Well, she's remarried, but she went through a divorce. And she's a real estate agent who specializes in helping people going through a divorce. Hi, Macy.
Hi, Jackie. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for being here. I love, love, love the article you wrote for Divorce Girl Smiling. It was called, What Does It Mean to Be a Strong and Independent Woman? And in this article, I want to tell my listeners that Macy basically told her story. And Macy, who has been a real estate agent, how long?
I've been in real estate for about 8 years.
Okay, so were you in real estate when you went through your divorce?
No.
No. Okay,
Mm-mm.
so this is a real authentic story of, and I think Macy, you're going to tell me this is true. You were scared. You didn't know how to be strong. You weren't sure how to be independent. So tell my listeners what that was like, and then we'll get into your story of how you became strong and independent.
So when I was first faced with divorce, I found out that that was what my now ex-husband wanted, and I was absolutely petrified. Pretty sure I had a nervous breakdown. Um, and once I finally got through that, I realized, all right, it's time for me to figure out where do I go next. I knew we didn't want to keep our marital home. It was big. It was just not the place that I wanted to be. So I had decided to move in with my parents. And in the meantime, so we sold that house. And then I'm going, all right, what do I do? And I remember I actually like talked to couple different people, like, should I buy a house? Should I buy a house? And my financial advisor was like, yes, you definitely should buy a house. Like I needed somebody else to tell me because I didn't know what to do. I was just so lost.
Well, you didn't
And
have the confidence in yourself. You probably
yeah,
never owned a home yourself. You were like, I can't do this, right? And
no,
so
yeah.
common.
Well, and every major financial decision I had made because with my ex-husband, we had been together since I was 21 years old. So even my very first car with a loan and everything was with him by my side. So doing this by myself felt super scary. Um, but I took the leap and, decided to buy a home, which was the best decision I could have possibly made. I mean, it just gave me the emotional stability, the financial stability, and then this opportunity for empowerment that I didn't even realize that I was going to be getting. I mean, you have this whole house that you have to take care of by yourself. So I was obviously freaked out and nervous and scared, but I had so many little opportunities that was like, oh, I can do that by myself. I can do that, But I remember one day I had to remove something. The tree had died in my yard or something. So I'd gone out, I got everything prepped and ready. And then I go inside and I grabbed some gloves. I had just bought new gardening gloves from Ace Hardware, and they were two left-handed gloves, and I cried because I'm like, this is so much. Like I can't even deal with purchasing the wrong set of gloves. Like it's just like it was so much pressure. But I figured it
Oh,
out and all of
um,
that. So
my crying moment came when I was standing on a chair in my kitchen because a mouse ran by my kitchen floor, and I was like,
yes,
I need a man. I
yes,
can't do this myself. A woman is not supposed to have to do this.
I know.
That was at the very beginning. But I wanted to say a couple things about your story that I picked up on. The first thing I noticed is that when you bought that house, how old were your kids?
They were sixth grade and fourth grade.
So
or
do you
third and second.
realize even how much you showed your kids how strong you were?
Hmm.
Mommy's independent, mommy's strong, mommy can buy a house. So are they girls, boys?
Two girls.
Two girls. Here's two girls thinking you don't need a man to buy a house.
Hmm.
And the second thing I just learned from you is that when I believe that when a woman buys a house herself, it's like saying, I don't need a husband, because it doesn't mean you're not going to get a husband. Obviously, you got a great, great husband shortly after. But what you did is you said to yourself, I'm going to own this house, whether I'm in a relationship with a man or not.
Yeah.
And that is so powerful.
Yeah. It absolutely it is. It's such an empowering thing that happens. And I mean, I was single for 5 years before I met my husband. But in that time, I mean, I remember sitting on my couch one day and I had been filling myself up because I didn't want to be alone. So filling up my calendar. And I had one evening, my girls went over to be with my parents. I was home alone in the house for probably the first time in a really long time because I didn't even share custody. My ex had moved out of state. So I'm home alone. And all of a sudden, I just remember sitting there going, oh my God, I love being alone. This feels so good. And it was the first time that I had ever really felt that sense of not feeling lonely. I would even feel lonely. I mean, in my marriage, I felt lonely. So this was really the first time that I felt not lonely and really craved that alone time. And so, from then on, that was such a big moment for me. I was like, I can do this. I can be alone. That was maybe, I don't know, 6, 8 months, maybe even a year after I'd gotten divorced that happened. Yeah.
Now,
So,
now I'm going to back up here because in your story in the article, we kind of skipped over this part. You had some dating disasters,
oh,
and
yeah.
maybe you were trying to cure your loneliness and your fear of being alone by dating all the wrong men. I did that too. I did the same thing.
Yes.
And so,
Yes.
how did that work for you? I mean, what was it that made you say, you know what, I can't cover up my pain by getting
Yeah.
into another relationship?
Yeah. So right out of my divorce, I started dating a gentleman who, from the beginning, was telling me like, "Oh, I don't really want to be in a relationship." He was very avoidant. If you've ever read the book Attached, I highly recommend it. So he was very avoidant, attached, and he hadn't really done his work from his wife had passed away. And anyway, so there was a ton of passion, but there was no. He was so commitment avoidant, and so he, after about 4 or 5 months being together, he finally was like, I can't do this anymore. And I think I cried more than I had cried losing my marriage because I hadn't really ever grieved my marriage. I went right into that relationship. So yeah, so that was kind of a disaster. I mean, I think I probably cried over, not really him, but him for probably 6 months because I just hadn't given myself a chance to be alone and really understand, God, I have so much healing to do. But I didn't listen. And then I started dating somebody else who was like, well, I don't know how I feel about you having your kids full time. And that should have been a big freaking red flag. And I should have run
Wow.
the other direction. But I was like, oh, it'll be fine. We'll figure it out. I hadn't really found my voice yet. And so that was another disaster that fell apart. And after that one, I was like, I got work to do. I got to figure out why do I keep allowing these things to happen that aren't congruent with what I really want. And so then I went on this, journey of, self-discovery and any any kind of, you know, um, workshop or a retreat or something I was throwing myself into because I knew that I needed to be okay being alone and get really clear on who it was that I am and what it was that I wanted and to learn how to be independent. What does that look like? What does that feel like to not need somebody to fill in all those gaps?
You're listening to the Divorced Girl Smiling podcast. My name is Jackie Pilosoff, and I'm your host. I'm here today with real estate agent and divorced mom, Macy Chance. Macy works for Live Laugh Denver Real Estate Group. She's been a real estate agent for 8 years. She's great at what she does. And we're talking about her personal story today and what it means to be strong and independent. We're going to take a short break. And when we come back, we are going to continue Macy's journey about how she got strong and independent. And then we're going to talk about what those things actually look like and what they aren't. So we'll be right back. Welcome back to the Divorced Girl Smiling podcast. My name is Jackie Pilosoff, and I'm your host. What does it mean to be a strong, independent woman? That's what we're talking about today. I'm here today with a very strong and independent woman. Her name is Macy Chance. Macy's a divorced mom. She's actually remarried happily to a great guy. And she's a real estate agent for Live Laugh Denver. And Macy has a specialty in helping men and women when they're getting divorced, either sell a home, buy a home, or both, or even find a rental if that's what you think you want to do. Okay, Macy, so we left off where you were saying you learned to be strong and independent, but that didn't happen overnight. What are some of the things that made you transform from I want to just have a boyfriend and that's going to cure everything to I'm strong, independent, and really happy. And that's when love came into your life.
Mhm. Well, I mean, I think it was a lot of little things. I mean, the biggest things I remember are the example of just sitting at home and feeling really happy to be alone instead of being really sad about being alone. That was probably the biggest thing that happened. And I don't know, I can't put my finger on like one thing. It was just a lot of little things that built up to it. And I just knew I was going to be fine. I knew I was going to be okay being alone. But, I was raising two girls by myself. I was handling everything around my house by myself. I decided to renovate my current home and then sell it, or my prior home and then sell it. And then I bought the house I'm in now. I renovated that. I was doing all of that by myself. And so
But
I
see,
just,
that's in and of itself right there because you were focusing on the renovations, trying to make a profit, flipping a house. You weren't thinking, oh, I need to find another husband. I mean, and I'm
mm-mm,
not even judging you if you were thinking that at the beginning. I got divorced, and my first gut instinct was like, well, gotta find husband number two. And that
mm-hmm,
was the worst strategy in the world. I dated all these nightmare guys, was
mm-hmm,
really had no self-esteem, really not happy with myself. But one thing it sounds like that got you over the hump to strong and independent was you focused in on your work. I mean,
mm-hmm,
you decided it was time to start rehabbing, selling homes, and then you got a real estate license,
mm-hmm.
right?
Yep.
And don't you feel like that just took your mind and the focus off of men for a little bit? Not like you weren't ever planning on dating
Right.
again, but just right then. So what advice do you have? Sorry, I'm gonna grab this little guy. I'll be right back. What advice do you have for women who are trying to figure out what the heck they want to do with their professional lives after divorce?
And for professional, I mean, I think it's, sometimes you just have to find a job, and sometimes and I think just knowing that like that doesn't have to be the end all be all. It's a journey, and giving yourself that space and compassion for like, this may not be what I want to do forever, but I need to do something. I mean, I had been working part-time. When I got divorced, I had to start working full-time. It wasn't what I ended up, wasn't real estate where I ended up finishing going. But now my dog's barking. But it's really just for me, I fell in love with real estate. I fell in love with the opportunities that it gave me, the independence that it gave me, the for my personal real estate. And then professionally, I was like, wait a second, I can help other people going through this gain that sense of independence, that sense of self-confidence that you just lose, in a divorce, whether or not it's amicable or horrible or whatever. You kind of lose yourself. So I would
All right,
say
I
it's
just love that where we're going with this. I love it. And the reason is because you're right. There's many reasons to go back to work. The first and foremost, maybe you have to, maybe,
yeah.
and actually, I feel sorry for women that have a ton of money who don't have to because they're the ones who are more lost a lot of times because they don't need the money. So, yes, let's break it down. You either need the money, you don't have to go get your dream job on day one. I don't care if
Mm-mm.
you work as like the receptionist at a yoga studio. If you enjoy that and you need a paycheck and that's what you're going to do, there's no shame in any job that
Mm-mm.
you do if you need the money. Secondly, like Macy said, it's not an end all, like you're going to be the manager of a yoga studio for the rest of your life. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but if that's not your dream job, you're just doing this temporarily till you figure it out. Try a bunch of different things. And then I always tell women, what do you like to do? Go get a job. If you love yoga, go be the yoga studio
Mm-hmm.
manager. If you love food, go work at a restaurant. And when you love something, it will give you connections to get more into it. And I want to tell my listeners that my entire career with Divorce Girl Smiling and being a former Chicago Tribune columnist started out writing a column for my local paper called the Glenview Announcements for $50 a week. And when I saw my name in the paper, I was like, this is so cool. And then it grew from there. Somebody went on vacation and they said, do you know how to write feature stories? And I was like, I hope so. I have a degree in journalism. Okay. I wrote a couple feature pieces that led to more. They said, do you want to do this on a regular basis? Now I said, I think I want a column. 2 years later, I had a column. So it builds on what you love to do. Just do anything because
Right.
doing nothing is the worst thing you can do.
Yeah, and I think all of it is about gaining that sense of independence. Obviously there's financial reasons to have to work for sure, and you can't overlook those. And sometimes you have to do something that you don't love, and it's just enough to get by, and that's okay. But even doing something, anything to pay the bills also can give you that sense of independence and realizing that you actually can be helpful in certain, you can start to lean into your strengths and figure out what your strengths are.
And then what happens after that? You get all this self love, self confidence. And guess what? You're so much more attractive to the world. You're more
Yeah.
attractive to people because you're attracted to yourself.
Yep.
So women want to be around you, men find you attractive, and all this good stuff starts coming your way. So, with
Yeah.
that said, I want to ask you, let's talk about, because I know people listening want to hear this. So then you say you went on this European vacation with your friends, you had a great time. You
Mhm.
came back and you said to your friends, I'm going on 12 dates in the first quarter of 2019, and then
Mhm.
that's it. And tell me about what happened from that.
Yes, and quickly I'll just say, I mean, the European vacation sounds so like, um, I don't know, romantic and whatever, and it was. And it was part of my commitment to really taking care of myself as being a single mom. Like I knew I needed to take care of myself, and so I would do not always lavish trips like that, but even just weekend getaways. So yes, we're on that trip. I decide, you know what, I am ready for the next level of healing that comes from being in relationship, because there's only so much that you can do on your own, and you have to do it on your own. You'll have to get to a point where I mean, it's not perfect, but you're going to have to heal more even in relationship. So, yes, I came back. We went in the end of 2018, the first quarter of 2019. I'm going on 12 dates, one date a week. And so my first two dates were duds, and my third date was my husband. And it was the moment that I realized, with all these other dates I had been on, not just the two, but the previous 5 years here and there, if it's not a yes, it's a no. If you're like, it's a maybe, whatever, that's a no. It's either a yes or anything else is a no. And when I met him, I was like, this is a yes. It's the most refreshing first date I've ever been on. We talked for 2 hours to the point where, oh my God, I have to be somewhere. And I totally lost track of time. And same thing with him. And so
It
it's
was
we
like
just
a clarity that you
yeah,
had never experienced.
yes,
That's how I
absolutely.
would describe my same situation.
Yeah, yeah,
It's like
yep,
it's just clear. It's just
yes.
and listen, that might not happen on the very first date, the
Mm-mm.
clarity like that, but some element where you can't wait to see the person again.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
I have heard of people who have been married for 30 years where the first date was kind of like, eh, but I'd say, and then like they went out again and then it was like great. So
sure.
yes, I think that clarity has to come in the first few dates, or
Yes.
else that's it.
Yeah,
And
and then
and we have to hope that after divorce, you are honest enough with yourself that even if you think this guy looks so good on paper and he's totally hot and you're attracted to him, but you're looking and thinking, I know in my heart he's a big drinker. This is a big red flag. You have to hope, we all do, that you love yourself enough to say, I deserve to move on. This is
yeah.
not the person for me.
Yeah, and I think that's part of the healing journey that you do on your own is you get to that point where you're like, okay, I think I can pick this out. I think I know what I'm going to see. But you don't really know it until you get into a relationship with somebody. And we may falter and we may make, the wrong decision and stay with somebody a little too long, but eventually we figure it out. And in this case, I mean, I wasn't like, oh my gosh, I'm all in. I mean, I have an anxious attachment. So I was like, okay, let's see where this goes. But I definitely felt something. And then the third date in, he says, I'm going to cancel all my other dates. I'm going to see where this thing goes. And I was like, oh, really? Like I was a little nervous at the time, but I mean, deep down, I knew that this was somebody that I really wanted to
Love
spend time
that.
with. Yeah.
I love him for saying that. Okay, my favorite line in your whole article that you wrote was, I didn't need Tad to save me. I had already saved myself. I
Yes.
actually have chills saying that because that is so amazing that you didn't need him. You would have been perfectly happy. I mean, I'm not saying that you're not ecstatic and you probably still wake up every day and you're so thankful that you have him, but
Mhm.
you knew that you would have still had a good life. You weren't like, I need him to be happy.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, going into that whole I'm going to go on 12 dates, I knew I was okay being alone. I knew I was okay being with myself. But part of why I said that and why that came to me is, my husband is an Enneagram 2. He's a helper. Acts of service is his love language. And so he would start to do things for me, like help my daughter fix her car, other things, like he would help me do things. And then I would be like, wait a second, I'm supposed to be independent here. I'm not supposed to need him to help me do things. And so, luckily enough, we have great communication. And so we had this conversation like, I feel really uncomfortable. I'm supposed to be strong and independent. I'm supposed to be doing things on my own. And now here you are helping me. And he's just like, well, I'm helping you because I want to help you. I don't think you need it. I don't think you're in distress. I don't think you're, incapable, but it's how I show my love and it's how I enjoy doing it. And so that's when I realized that.
Okay, that is the perfect segue into, I was going to end this podcast with, what does it mean to be strong and independent and what doesn't it mean? And the first thing it doesn't mean is that you have to do everything by yourself. So
Hmm.
being strong and independent means that you can still have a man, you can still get help from him, you can lean on people. We don't expect you, nobody expects you to be this independent person who doesn't need anybody.
Right.
Everybody needs somebody.
Hmm.
Okay. But what does strong and independent mean? It means to me, like what we were just saying, you didn't need anyone. It was nice to have them.
Hmm.
Okay. What else does it mean to be strong and independent?
Well, really, and I write about this in the article. I mean, strong and independent you can start to think it means, oh, I need to put all these walls up. I can't let people in. I need to handle things on my own. I can't, be vulnerable. And, really, I think it's the opposite of that. I think that the more vulnerable you allow yourself to be, the stronger you become, because vulnerability is a very scary thing, and it really does show courage and strength. And so, learning to share things that are hard for you to share. I mean, you need to be in a safe relationship, obviously, and that's part of that discernment that you learn as you go forward. But when you can be with somebody that's truly worthy of sharing these difficult things and allowing them in to help you, I mean, that's to me strength and independence.
I love it. And what's also I wanted to say, being independent doesn't mean being alone. So if
Mhm.
you are afraid of being alone and living alone, that isn't independence. Independence means you can be married and be independent because you're a better spouse if you have independence and strength.
Mhm.
And you can also be alone and not be lonely.
Mhm.
So I know a lot of people who are in bad marriages. Sorry, I had to take a sip of water. I know people who are in bad marriages and they feel very alone and lonely. And I know
Mhm.
people who are single, living alone, that have a ridiculous pickleball schedule. They're seeing people all the time. They're working. They're never home. They're really happy being single and they don't feel alone or lonely.
Mhm.
So, the last thing I want to say is that it's only temporary. So if you're listening to this thinking, I don't want to be strong and I do want to be strong and independent, but I really don't. I don't want to be alone forever. Macy and I are telling you, you're not going to be alone forever, but you might have to be alone for a little while.
Mhm.
You meet the healthy person for you, the right person. You don't want to not want to be alone and then settle for somebody and end up divorced again or unhappy. You deserve to have and wait for that really perfect relationship for you. And when you're strong and independent, there's no timetable. You don't care because
Mhm.
you just let it happen. What do you think?
Yep.
I'll give you the last word.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree, and it's also okay to feel like you want to be with somebody. I mean, I felt that way the whole time I was on my this, journey of healing. It wasn't like, "Oh, I'm going to heal and I'm fine and I'm not going to think about it until, I'm not going to think about being in a relationship until I'm, through it." It's part of the journey, it's part of, yeah, I'd really like the camaraderie. I'd really like to be with somebody, and I know I'm not ready. I know I'm not the person who I want to be, and it's totally possible to become that person and then meet somebody, like you said, that is worthy of you and worthy of being with you. And then when you are able to get there, you really can find somebody that you want to spend the rest of your life with, that treats you well, that treats you like a queen.
And that doesn't matter if you're in your 40s, 50s, 60s, or even 70s. I've been seeing it. I have a cousin who is 82 who just fell in love with someone she met online, and they are so happy. So, with that said, on that note, Macy, thank you so much for taking time to do this. You're one of my favorite people because I love your energy and positivity, and I would work with you as a real estate agent in 2 seconds.
Well, thank you so much. I always love being with you too. Thanks for having me on today.
If you want to learn more about Macy, you can find her on her website at macychance.com. You can also find her in the trusted professionals section of Divorce Girl Smiling, along with so many other wonderful, trusted, vetted divorce professionals. And if you want to read articles, listen to more podcasts, download my mobile app, or sign up for my free consult, divorcedgirlsmiling.com is where you can find me. Thanks so much for listening, everyone. We'll talk to you real soon.